and welcome to Reliving My Youth. My name is Noel. My guest this week is actor Peter Keleghan. Now, Peter is probably best known for portraying the original Lloyd Braun on Seinfeld in the non-fat yogurt episode. He talks about getting the role, just experiences on the set, working with Jerry Stiller and Estelle Harris, and he talks about why he wasn't in the other episodes that featured Lloyd Braun. That went to actor Matt McCoy. It's a reason I really didn't think about until Peter brought it up. And speaking of that topic, Peter, native of Canada, so in the mid-90s he returned to Canada to work, and he has worked a ton. Murdoch Mysteries, as well as 18 to Life, one of my new favorite shows that is over 25 years old now. It's called The Newsroom, not the Aaron Sorkin one from HBO, but it's really funny. Go check it out. It's on YouTube. It also you get DVD copies of it as well. We talk about his first movie called Screwballs, which is basically a Canadian version of Porky's. And if you remember the Jeanette Goldstein episode that we had, she mentions the term fuck you money. Peter talks about which movie he did to get the fuck you money, so to speak. Peter, really nice guy, and I hope you enjoy my conversation with him. So, Peter, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
A pleasure. Good to be here.
Yeah. So I love Canada.
Can you see me through the smoke?
Oh, yeah. I know, right? I got to put a mask on. It leads me perfectly to the first. I love Canada. The great imports of music and beer, and great TV and the arts and whatnot. But not so much these wildfires that you guys are importing up to us. I'm sure it's quite bad for you up there as well as us down here.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we have a lot of warnings going around. People are supposed to wear masks outside. So yeah, COVID carries on, but in a smoky form.
Yeah, I mean, I work in New York City, and it's like I'm off today, but it's like Armageddon down there. It's just orange. Looks like we're on Mars. It's
awful.
It's really bad. Everyone just stay safe and wear a mask again. So that's like just
fashion.
Yeah. So a completely different topic. I was on Twitter yesterday, and I found this interesting poll. I don't know if you've seen it. It's who is the most handsome Canadian actor 2023. So
2023.
Yeah, 2023. So can you guess who number one is? Someone you worked with.
Yannick Bisson?
Yep. He had 25% of the vote. So okay.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Joshua Jackson, who was on Fringe and Dawson's Creek, other stuff, came in second. Rynan, I don't know who that is.
No.
Ty Rynan? Okay. Evan Martin Williams?
No.
Okay. Nathan Fillion, who's been on Firefly. Yeah, he's in Guardians of the Galaxy right now.
Ryan Gosling in there somewhere?
Who's that?
Ryan Gosling?
He is. Actually, no, he's not. The other Ryan Reynolds is on there. And that brings me to you. You actually are more handsome than Ryan Reynolds. You made the list. Yeah, at 2.4%. So congrats. And you even beat Keanu Reeves as well. So
of course I did. Yeah. We talked about that. He said, yeah, you should beat me.
Yeah. So you should be starring in John Wick 5, I'd imagine, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Starting next week.
All right, awesome. Yeah, so I can't wait to see you, kick some ass in that.
Yeah, I just have to pump up a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
And lose about 10 years.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'll be fine.
Okay, but you look great, so that's all that matters.
Very handsome. Put your glasses on.
Yeah. Don't worry, I got a face for podcasting, so it works out nicely. Yeah, so we'll get into Seinfeld and some of the other stuff, but like, what drew you to acting? How did you get the acting bug?
Gosh, it was a long time ago. When I was in high school, I wanted very badly to be a pilot, and my dad worked in aviation, and there was a little flying school at the company that he worked for, and I got my license when I was 16. And I was on my way to be a pilot, and found out that you needed all this math, chemistry, and physics to do that. And I looked at my marks after high school, and it was math, chemistry, physics, D, E, and F, and English and drama, A and A plus. So, as I say, I put 2 and 2 together, got 5, and became an actor.
Yeah, at least you're in the top 5 in those other grades, if you want to look at it that way.
Well, it's one of those things where I was an incredibly shy guy, a kid, and you'll probably hear this story quite often from actors that when you're shy, the ability to go on stage or to act with somebody else's words protects you as a person. So you get out there and you act as if you're not you. And so and in high school, I started doing that, and girls seemed to like it. So I thought, yeah, I wouldn't mind going this way.
Yeah, it's either acting or being in a band, right? Tracks girl.
Or
So
being in a band. Yeah, I
yeah,
thought it was going to be a really good-looking pilot uniform, but it didn't
that
happen that
too. Yeah,
way.
yeah. I guess you chose the other pilots, right? Pilot season, or rather, actually, than being a pilot.
Well, there you go. Good one. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm sure being on stage, you've been like live theater and stuff like that. So what do you prefer, live theater compared to being in a movie or TV, or do you like having no net as opposed to multiple takes?
Oh yeah, I much prefer television and film. I much prefer that medium because theater for me is in some ways very frustrating that you get it right, uh, and 200 people, 500 people see it. You get it right in television, and thousands or millions of people see it. And I never liked repetition. I think Anthony Hopkins and myself are that way too. That he just to do it over the same thing over and over and over again. And being a bit of a perfectionist, I've always hated the days when I've done a lot of theater and continue to do a lot of theater, but I've never liked the fact that some days are not as good as others,
Right.
and if that happens. It just frustrates the heck out of me.
Yeah.
And so when you do it, when you do television and film, like I said, you end up working so that what comes out as the final product, edited together or not, is much more satisfying to me. Now, the other hybrid to that, of course, is the fact that some television is done in front of live audiences, and it's not my favorite either. When I was in California doing Seinfeld and Cheers and Murphy Brown and stuff, it was always in front of a live audience, and I didn't. It just didn't work for me. I know, especially the live. Stand-up comedians really thrive on it, but I'm kind of the opposite of that. I'm not. I don't have that gene. I like working working in the moment and not being hypersensitive to the fact that you're doing it for 200 people, that if they don't like it right at the outset, you got to do it again, and they may not like it as much, and it seems like a bit of a rabbit hole for me. So I did a show for years called the Red Green Show, and it was always done remotely. I played a forest ranger that was in the middle of nowhere,
Right.
and I always loved just me, Steve Smith, the guy that played Red Green, and myself just going out into the middle of nowhere and playing with a cameraman, as opposed to when we went into the studio and they built a treehouse in the studio and there was 200 people there, and we had to make sure that we did it for them. And the immediacy is nice, but again, I like being able to just say, no, I didn't like that, let's do it again.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever asked this. I've done almost 300 of these. I don't think I've ever asked anybody this question. When you're on stage, have you ever been like distracted by an audience member or like kind of focused in on one, or can you block that out?
Oh gosh, yeah. uh I mean, the first thing that came to mind is my wife and I were doing a play a couple of years ago, and it happened that her father, very famous actor who passed away recently, Gordon Pinsent, was in the audience, and he was in his 80s at the time, and was wearing a hearing device. That in theaters they sometimes give you a little
Yeah.
hearing aid, headphones that you can
Right.
hear it better. And we foolishly equipped him with a bag of potato chips, and we're doing the play, and in a fairly important quiet moment of the play, there's this crunching and crunching, and a bag rippling and all the noise, and it was close, and we thought, I was this close from stopping the play and saying, we'll wait for the person to finish with the chips and then we'll carry on.
Yeah.
Thank God I didn't, because it was Gordon who
Right.
have been pulled out as he the chips. But absolutely, yeah. I mean, it happens all the time, and you could use it, or it could work against you. And if it's certainly, if it's laughter, you can use it big time. If it's gasps and sobs, obviously, if they're into it. But if it's extraneous stuff like telephones and cell phones and people talking or whispering, or I did a kind of an off-color play a couple of years ago called Fully Committed with a lot of swear words in it, and every time we had a group of senior citizens, we'd get an awful lot of
right,
and that just drove me to distraction.
yeah,
It just
right. Yeah, there was a Seinfeld episode where his agent told Jerry they flew, I think, to Ithaca for a stand-up show he had, that the pilot of the plane was in the audience, and that's all he can focus on was that, and the completely bombed. And then a pilot wouldn't let him on the plane. He got kicked off the plane because the show was so bad. So I just thought that was pretty funny. But
yeah.
Yes. How did you end up coming down to LA to for?
Well, I mean, it's a story that has been going on for decades. That LA, California, Hollywood is the gold standard. It's the Olympics of the business, the acting business and the television and film business. So, everybody with any kind of hopes, dreams, aspirations, and guts usually ends up coming in some fashion. There was a scheme at the time called an H-1 visa. It was an INS program that allowed you to come down to the United States and work if you could prove to a government bureaucrat that you had extraordinary merit in your own country. So you would end up, sending them photographs of your awards and clippings from newspapers and whatever it was, and then they would allow you to work down there for 2 years. And then you would have to renew after 2 years, making sure that you filed your taxes and did everything properly. And shortly after I left, or just as I was leaving, I think the American unions were complaining that so many foreigners were coming in and taking their jobs, even though we did the whole Taft-Hartley thing, proving that we were the only ones, American couldn't do this job, etc.
Right.
But they started a petition to the government to stop it, and so the government put in little roadblocks to prevent you in different small ways of coming down there. In other words, they changed it from you being able to work for any studio. You could work for Disney, you could work for Paramount, you could work for Warner Brothers when I was doing it in the 90s, to job specific. So in other words, if you get hired by Disney to do this, for the 2 years that they allowed you to be there, you could only work for Disney. You couldn't work for anybody else. And also they did another thing which prevented me from doing the second Seinfeld, which was that they put a 2-week processing time in it. And television rarely works beyond 2 weeks in episodics, so that the casting director called and said, "We bring your character back," and I got very excited about that. And then I found out that through my immigration lawyer, who was the best guy down there, and I found that out because he told me that as soon as I called him, he just got off the phone with Castle Rock asking about this Canadian actor to go down to do it. So I knew he was the guy, and he said, "There's just no way around that. You just have to, they can't, if they can't move the show beyond 2 weeks, but there's no way you can get this visa in time." So there it was. I was, one of the regrets of my life that I couldn't do that second episode.
Yeah, I always wondered why they recast you. I thought maybe you just didn't want to do it, or they want to go a different direction, or because he went so nuts, they just the actor.
I was romantic. I was doing everything. I at the time it was fax machines, and I was faxing the Prime Minister's office and the INS and this and that. I was I got to get down there. I got to be able to legally do this job. But there was just no way around it. And the casting directors and the people at the production, Larry David, was very kind, because on the morning that they were looking to replace my character, or the day before the casting call, they called me to say, "Could you do it?" And I said, "I just can't. It just can't be done." And so they recast Matt McCoy.
Yeah. Now, did you ever think about coming down just illegally to do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but no, because as I told them, I said, they wouldn't, when they invited me to come back down, they said, "Are you able to get down here?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely, but I'm going to need a visa," because mine had expired.
Okay.
Never imagining that Castle Rock would ever have a problem with that if I didn't say that. if I
Right.
just came down and did the job and then got the visa, and then once the paperwork was done 2 weeks later, it would have been fine.
Yeah.
But we're Canadians. We're honest.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's honesty.
Stupid, but honest.
Stupid but honest. Yeah. I mean, it shows you have morals, so I guess that's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was what it was, and I came back here. I loved working in Los Angeles. I loved when I was working, but when I wasn't working, I had both of my children were born down there, and I just couldn't stand the lifestyle, the sort of paranoid desperation around the business and the earthquakes and the fires and the riots and the floods and the metal detectors at elementary schools. I couldn't do it anymore, and so I came back to Canada, and it's been incredibly busy. It's been twice the work and half the money, but
Right.
the life is it's better up here. I mean,
Yeah.
it really is. It's there's less pressure. There's more respect. It's a smaller industry. It's a where you have to jump over 150 guys to get the job on Cheers, you only have to jump over 15 guys to get the job here. So
Right. Yeah. And we'll get to some of the roles in Canada, which I absolutely love. But what did you like with Seinfeld? How was the auditioning process? Was there anybody famous that you went up against to get the role of Lloyd?
yeah, I don't know if I've got the exact right timeline, but um, um, oh, his name's gone. Breaking Bad.
Oh,
Um,
Bryan Cranston.
Bryan Cranston.
Yeah.
Uh, while I was down there, he was kind of in the same kind of situation. I think we're very similar age, and he would inevitably show up at similar auditions all the time.
Right.
And I don't remember if Seinfeld was one of them, but it was always me and him, and we'd end up sitting across the room, looking at each other, and saying, you were me with this one."
Yeah.
He ended up playing the dentist or something on Seinfeld, and
Yeah.
I don't
Tim
remember if
Watley.
that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe did that happen after non-fat yogurt or before?
I think his first episode, I think, was before.
Was
Uh,
it?
I think it was. Yeah.
Okay. Well, he was one of the guys. The
Right.
other people in the room, I'm sure there were people there. John Hamm was the guy that was kicking
Okay.
around at the time. But when the room was daunting, but because in the room was a couple of the writers, Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld, and there you were, and do it. And it was the kind of thing, when when you learn the lines of an audition very quickly, you're very right for it.
Right.
So I learned this one particularly quickly, and I knew from the reaction in the room that I thought, yeah, okay, this is going to happen, and sure enough, it did. And and very gracious. I mean, on set they were always very, very welcoming, because it's a very common story that when you know television shows that have an attitude about them, that there's a certain hierarchy, and if you're the new guy and you're not very welcome, they're going to get what they deserve, which is somebody that's a little bit intimidated, not doing their full potential to catch up to the race that they're already running very quickly and well. But exactly the opposite with a show that's really strong, because they know that they're only as good as their weakest link, which is the new guy and the guest on the show. So they welcome you, and it's what do you have any ideas for this? And they laugh with you, and it's camaraderie, and you just immediately want to do more and better, and you want to risk. I want to make them look good as well. So yeah, and so within any production that, as I say, within any production that wants a new person to succeed, it's always the best policy to be able to embrace them. But the real genius, the gold of all of the successful shows like Cheers with James Burrows and
Right.
Seinfeld with Larry David, the autonomy is right there on set. The ones that always struggle for me is the one without the auteur. It's any show I've ever done that's been very successful always has one person that the buck stops with, and they create the way they're going to create, and they're left alone by the hierarchy, the suits, the bureaucrats, the business people, the TV execs. If they're smart enough to leave, if they asking them to paint a picture, then they're smart enough to let them alone to choose the colors and the palette that they're going to paint in, it's inevitably better. And it's the case with David Chase and the shows I've done up here and everything that I've ever done. The more condense the hierarchy on set at the time without any kind of concern about having to prove a better joke to another executive is inevitably going to be better, work better.
Right. And I guess at both those shows, they were like, well, Cheers was a juggernaut by the time you came on, and Seinfeld was just at that point, getting to where it was. So I'm sure, why the executive is going to tinker with something that is so great.
Yeah, well,
exactly. You would think so. They'd stay away. So
yeah, and but at the same time, when they were starting out, when they were a fledgling show, they still didn't have that much interference by the network, from what I understand. Right. They knew they were hiring somebody, and it was to the network's credit. And I think might have been Brandon Tartikoff at the time, but he trusted the artists that he hired. He believed that, I'm hiring you to do this. I trust you. Do it. If it doesn't work out, fine. Yeah. I'll handle the money and the network. You do the creative.
Right. Because I think Cheers was like bottom of the rankings the first year, and Seinfeld was not what it was. Seasons 3 and on. It was luckily it didn't get canceled, because those first season and a half was like, the show may not last.
It's a show about nothing.
Exactly.
And they did a show about that, which is genius.
Yeah, absolutely. And I heard that the Cheers set was a lot different than the Seinfeld set.
Yes and no. I mean, again, it was James Burrows that was executive producer. He directed the episodes, both of the episodes I did. But again, Ted Danson, incredibly funny, friendly guy, very down to earth, no BS. They always come up to you and put his arm around you at the craft table, say, hey, how's it going, blah blah blah. And similar kinds of thing. There was some odd things happening, I guess, with Kelsey Grammer, and it postponed some rehearsals because of issues he was having. And who was it? I think it was Kirstie Alley. I think at the time, I might be mixing this up with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. One of them was breastfeeding at the time, so we had some issues with that.
Right.
But
I think it might have been Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
It might have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, all very, very nice people. And again, they know that they have to welcome you because they want you to soar.
Yeah.
But no real problems. The worst experience I had was doing a pilot called Baby Talk. You might remember that show.
Yeah.
George Clooney, I think, did it for a year, and it was a producer named Ed Weinberger who created. Might have been Mary Tyler Moore's show. I can't remember exactly, but it was a real nightmare doing that. The show, I mean, it was, for my money, what it ended up going to air, it was unwatchable for me. But I replaced an actor who was playing my role, which was the father of the baby that the lead actress was trying to get to be involved with the father. I turned out to be an asshole. Mm-hmm. She dismisses me.
Yeah.
Anyway, the original cast was me, Connie Selica, George Clooney, Bill Hickey from Prizzi's Honor. Remember that?
Yeah.
And Ed Weinberger. And the screaming and the yelling from Ed Weinberger, it just wasn't working. He just couldn't make it work. And then the show, we do the pilot, and it is what it is. And the next year, I get fired. Selica gets fired. The producer, writer, director, Ed Weinberg gets fired. George Clooney stays on, and I think Bill Hickey stays on. And I think they do a year, but then the cast keeps changing, and it was just it was an absolute dog's dinner of a show.
Jeez.
That I think was probably one of the worst experiences I had down there.
Oh wow. That's great. Now,
I remember on a particularly bad day, and Ed Weinberger was screaming at everybody, "Just why aren't you making this work? I'm not making it work." And I thought of, when you take over for somebody, and after the pilot is shot, they actually
yeah,
shot this pilot, and then the network hated it, so they had to reshoot it. So Ed said, I'm going to change the guy. The guy, so he brings me in, and it still wasn't working. So obviously, it had nothing to do with the cast. It had to do something
right.
with the script.
Yeah,
Uh, but he just laid into everybody. He was just so mean. And I'm standing in the bathroom, just sort of trying to get my head back together, and Clooney is at the urinal beside me, and he looks over and he says, "You okay?" I said, I
yeah,
guess I have to be, George. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, don't worry about it. All bark, no bite.
right. Oh boy. But
Very nice, very, very down to earth guy.
yeah, oh, that's good. That's good. Now, I heard speaking of down to earth, Jason Alexander was probably the nicest on the set for Seinfeld, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jason was fantastic. Yeah, he had he was always the guy that would, he would always have a joke. He'd always come up and be chummy, and it was a real pleasure. Most of my experiences down there were a real pleasure. It was always the life around things, and
yeah,
the fact that something did go or didn't go, in the politics, and pulling into some major studio. It might have been Paramount, and for doing a pilot, and you've got a parking stone with your name on it, and I thought, okay, well, this is it.
hmm,
And then the day after we shot the pilot, I had to come back to do a voiceover or something. My parking thing was being painted over by
oh,
some guy. So it's cruel, but it is what it is.
right. Oh, yeah, that's too bad. Now,
Yeah,
yeah, were you able to watch the episodes that Matt McCoy portrayed Lloyd Braun?
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think. Is it Serenity Now? Is that it?
yeah,
No,
Serenity
it
Now.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, and then he ended up working with Frank and selling computers too. That was a Serenity Now episode, but he was also the God
yeah.
episode. Yeah,
Yeah, I think I probably resisted watching too much of it because I was still very depressed about it.
yeah,
I should catch up with it at some point.
yeah. I mean, it's on every channel and here in the States. I think the Weather
Oh,
Channel still shows reruns and
yeah,
every channel
yeah, yeah,
has
yeah.
it.
Daily.
Yeah. Now, so what was like working with Jerry Stiller and Estelle Harris because you had some scenes with them.
So funny. So funny. I had this thing, and I think they cut it out of the show, but because they were allowing me to play, I said, how about when I come in to really rub it in to meet the family?
Right.
I got this great suit and coat on. I said, how about I bring her a bunch of flowers? It's still Getty's character, a bunch of
Yeah.
flowers. And she just goes crazy over the flowers. And we do a couple of takes of that. I don't know why they didn't use it, but Jerry, they're both fabulous, fabulous actors. But Jerry had some hard times with some lines. He had to do a few takes,
Right.
and it was fine, because we killed ourselves laughing when he would dry. We would,
Yeah.
yeah. You're talking about a long time ago here, so
No, I
there's
know. Yeah.
memory is fading.
Right. No, I know. And then it's I guess the secondary plot was Jerry Seinfeld dealing with a kid who was cursing.
My God, he couldn't get that done. When that kid, are we allowed to swear on this thing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so when the kid says, "Thanks for ruining my dad's business, you fat fuck,"
Yeah.
and this little kid, this face with a big, angry little face, and Jerry just could not do it. And when he went, we all started to go, and that one took a bunch of takes to get that done.
Or, yeah.
It was killer. It was just killer.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really good. Yeah, still one of my favorite episodes. That was great. The non-fat yogurt. Now, I discovered the show probably maybe a year ago, and because not knowing that you were in it, I just happened to fall on YouTube. The Newsroom,
Yeah.
your version of the Newsroom, not the HBO version, which you have a little bit of Lloyd Braun in you, in that, and I think that happened right after you filmed your episode, right? Seinfeld, right? That was after.
Yeah, I'm gonna say you're right. I moved back to Toronto from Los Angeles in '95, and I think the Newsroom was right around that late '90s.
Wow.
Um, it was a fabulous script by a guy that Ken Finkelman was his name. He wrote Airplane 2, and I think he wrote some Madonna movie. He did
Yeah, he
some
did. I think Grease too. Also.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, he had this show, and it was about a newsroom, and my character was very, very vacuous, but very posed with a great voice and great hair,
Jim
and
Walcott. Yeah.
knew all, and yeah, Jim Walcott, and he had all the mannerisms which he practiced vociferously to make sure that he held the coffee mug up and looked in the right direction in the right way, with pithy questions and answers, and had an absolute blast. Had a very, very hard time keeping it together. Many times we just started laughing so hard that eventually either me or Ken would have to get out of frame, and I would look at a spot on the wall so I wouldn't have to look into his eyes, and then he would look at a spot on the wall and I would do my lines off. Still,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have to look at each other, so we wouldn't laugh. But a lot of fun, and a lot of kudos for it. I think it won an international Emmy. I think Time Magazine called it one of the best 10 shows of the year. Um, yeah, it was a very, 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 it actually kicked off a big part of my career in this country.
Yeah, no, it's I love it. It's great because I work in TV news,
Yeah.
in the background. So yeah, so you watch that and you kind of laugh, and some of it's based on obviously true stuff, and some it's like a little obviously far fetched, but yeah,
Oh
but
yeah.
yeah, no,
Well, we
it's
we
great,
were actually invited. It's the CBC, which is the equivalent of BBC or your
right?
NBC. So the cast was invited to go to the actual newsroom at the CBC,
Okay,
and so they invited us in because they were very flattered. Well, we're doing the show about the news, and here's the anchorman, and here's the intern, and here's the director. And we
yeah,
just sort of were a fly on the wall watching. But then after the first 6 episodes aired, we were persona non grata. We were not allowed
I'm sure.
anywhere near the newsroom.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We were prepared a lot to again my mind. Larry Sanders,
Oh yeah, Gary Shanley.
Gary Shanley.
Yeah,
Yeah, that kind of breaking out of reality, and the on screen stuff, and there's the off screen stuff. But for the most part, I think we got nothing but really, really glowing reviews, except of course for the conservatives, or in your case, the Republicans who took
right.
exception to we were swearing and
Yeah, of course.
bit more liberal than their public broadcaster they thought should be.
Yeah. But then I liked after the first season you did the special where you decided to run for office, which was absolutely brilliant, and the way you flip flopped,
Oh, thanks. I'm
seconds.
glad you watched it. Yeah,
Yeah, it
I
was.
know that when the new newsroom, people get it mixed up.
Yeah,
You were in the
right.
oh, not that one, the one that was before. I was talking to Ken, and he said that Aaron Sorkin actually asked him if he could use the name because he couldn't use the name of the newsroom because it had been used on a TV show.
Right.
And that's when I knew it was definitely over because Ken said, "Yeah, take
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I'm done with that. Yeah."
Right.
And,
And
and,
yeah.
he was a very, very smart guy, but hated writing, and he got bored very, very quickly. And as soon as that thing was over, which gave him carte blanche within our network here,
Yeah.
so he did whatever he wanted after that, on the strength of what happened with the newsroom.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to give away what happened, because even though it's over 25 years old, but it's on YouTube. I think there's DVDs for it as well. So yeah, check it out. It's laugh out funny. It still holds up. And Aaron Sorkin, even before the newsroom, he did a show called Sports Night, which dealt with kind of like a sports network. Not as funny as the newsroom, your version, but it was supposed to be comedy as well, and had really good acting.
Yeah, I've
So,
never seen that. Okay,
yeah, it lasted I think 2-3 seasons. It was before he did West Wing and
cool.
all that stuff. Yeah, it's really good. But
Yeah,
yeah, like you've done so many other shows in Canada. How come you never were on Da Vinci's Inquest?
good question. I don't know.
Okay.
I do know that Da Vinci's Inquest was shot on the opposite side of the country
Oh,
in
Vancouver.
Vancouver,
Oh, okay.
and I live in Toronto.
Right. Okay.
So the Canadian actors that did end up going out to do it, Da Vinci's, were, Victor Gerber and
Yeah.
Paul Gross, and people that they really needed or wanted or were friends with. Oh gosh, who was the producer anyway? But generally speaking, they picked from a stable of actors that were local.
Okay. Yeah. I because that show was syndicated here for a little bit, and I absolutely fell in love with the show. So it was,
Yeah, it's good.
yeah.
Yeah, and Nick Campbell is a friend of mine. It's very, very good.
Okay. Yeah, he was great. Yeah. Absolutely. So I guess you can say like that, and maybe Murdoch Mysteries is what Law and Order is to US, right? I mean, because every like Canadian actor
Well,
on Murdoch
Murdoch,
Mysteries.
we're getting a Law and Order Toronto. Do you hear that?
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's starting up in a couple of months. We've got Law and Order Toronto Criminal Intent or something.
Okay.
So it's a drama that's starting up in a few months. Casting has yet to be announced, but I don't know anything about anything yet. But that would be lovely.
I'm sure you'll
Murdoch Mysteries. Murdoch Mysteries is a different thing, though.
right.
It's kind of a Canadian Sherlock Holmes,
Yeah.
and very, very family viewing, and it's turn of the century, so it's a period piece, and it's a very comfortable show that people either really love, and when they really love it, they really
Yeah.
love it. But we've had open houses on set where people have flown in from France and Japan and Germany and England. So yeah, people are really rabid about that show, and a lot of fun to do. I've been doing it now for 16, 17 years. My character started out as a kind of a, well, he's Canada's first spy, so
Right.
he's the first member of, like your CIA or something, and brings in a lot of the international intrigue into this local, very sort of provincial cop station, which obviously, if you've seen it, has fantastical storylines where
Yeah.
I get stuck in a rocket and I shipped off to Borneo, and I land in Borneo and live with the Kahoot tribe for 4 years, and then I come back the next year dressed as a shaman, and oh my gosh, it was so fun, though, so fun. And we're just about to start up again. My wife is actually plays my wife in the show,
Oh, great.
Leah. Yeah, Leah Pinson. So she's back this year doing a second episode. She turns out to be a German spy,
Uh-oh.
and she's sent off to jail our last episode. So she's coming back. It's going to be interesting to see where we fit in, or how we connect again.
Yeah. Are you guys like, okay, do you separate work from like personal stuff when you guys get home?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. Oh, yeah. No, that's falling off a rock for us. Been doing it for so long. It's just
Yeah.
all that stuff stays, on set. There's you're when you come home, and when you have that much intense work over sometimes 14, 15 hours, you come home and you're buzzed, and if your partner hasn't been through the same experience, it's a different sort of thing. They're probably asleep, and you're just trying to have a glass of wine and calm down. But for the most part, we've been doing it for so long, it's second nature on how we have to leave that stuff outside, and keep what we have in our relationship as sacred and special as possible.
Right.
We've been married now for 22 years, so
Oh, great.
we've been doing
Congrats.
it a while. Thanks.
Yeah. I'm 22 next month also. So
Congrats. All
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
How long do you give it?
Till I'm 6 feet under. I'll put it that way.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's your only way out, huh?
Exactly. I'm sure she'll kill me now. Yeah. I've like sleep apnea. So like she basically, was gonna murder me. It's like, you better go to the doctor before I put a pillow over your face. And sure enough, I got one of those machines now. So I'm miserable, but I don't snore anymore, so she sleeps like a baby.
Perfect.
It's all that matters. It's all that matters. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that'll
Yeah.
save a marriage.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, but yeah, Murdoch Mysteries, it syndicates down here every week, so I'm able to watch
Yeah,
it.
it's called The Artful Detective or something down there.
Yeah, it's now that they switched it. It's Murdoch Mysteries down here as
Oh,
well.
is it?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. I didn't
Yeah,
know that. Good.
yeah. Because I wouldn't even know what it was.
Is it on 8 board or something?
It's no, it's actually on the ABC affiliate in New York. Like one is like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning on Saturday or Sunday or something like that. But it's on.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, everyone check it out. It's really good. But I gotta ask you about the first movie you did, Screwballs. I guess that was Canada's version of Porky's.
Oh, it was. I mean, after Porky's success, so many teenage exploitation copycats came out, and that was one of
Yeah.
them. Made for 15. How much was it made for? It's like made for $50,000 or something, and it was all bankrolled by Roger Corman. Do you remember
Of
Roger
course,
Corman?
yeah, very well, yeah.
So he was B movie king, and he had this guy named Maurice Smith was a mentee of his, and he threw this money by um, Maurice Smith's way. Roger did, and made this very very awful. I think it's basically unwatchable, but it was one of the very first films I've ever. I think it was the first film I ever did,
Yeah,
and or had any kind of substantial role in, and it was all non-union and very cheap and very exploitive, and it was not the best experience of my life, but it's something that had to be done, and
right.
fortunately it lives on in perpetuity, and people, well,
Yeah,
either love it or hate it. I don't know many people that love it, but anyway.
right. It's out there. Yeah. 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 I had an actress on recently and she did a movie which she thinks was terrible as well, but she called it Fuck You Money.
Yeah,
Yeah. Have you done any of those besides Screwballs? I'm sure you didn't get paid anything for that, but like any of the movies that you based.
cheaper by the dozen too.
Okay.
Yeah, Steve Martin.
Was that
Yeah,
Bottom
well, you
Hunt,
probably.
right?
Yeah, well, it was. I had such a. I had no idea why they wanted me for this part, but they
Yeah.
kept pursuing me, and it probably on the strength of a lot of, I don't know, somebody in the production knew who I was. I don't,
Yeah.
anyway. But the director said to me, he says, "Okay, Peter, you're playing a guy who rents them out the cottage, and it's almost like you're I don't know, you're like a Wilford Brimley guy with a little lantern, and then you go out and you rent them the cottage. Anyways, good luck." And that was the extent of what I knew about the thing, and I had no idea what
Right.
the heck I wanted. And there was money in that thing. My gosh, off of the back of the success of the first one, it was,
Right.
you showed up on set, and there had to have been 50 trailers and trucks, and they rented a town, and they built houses, and they Steve Martin and Gene Levy and Bonnie Hunt. I think it was Bonnie Hunt.
Yeah.
All the main characters, anyway, had body doubles, exact body doubles. So whenever
Okay.
there was anything that they didn't need to be partaking in, including cast shots for the family photos and things,
Yeah.
none of the lead actors would have to be there. It was always the body double, and then they would superimpose the
Yeah.
faces on the in the shot of Steve and everybody else. But a fun experience. Steve was very gracious. Always had his banjo handy between
Mhm.
takes, and
Right.
we were in a beautiful area, cottage country, just north of Toronto. Most of my kids were fairly small, 8 and 10 years old at the time, and they desperately wanted to get into acting. So I thought, okay, uh, let's fix them. Let's fix it.
Yeah.
So I got them a part as extras on the movie, and the egg on the spoon race or the three-legged race or whatever it was. And they spent, a good 12 hours in the sweltering heat, well hydrated, and
Yeah.
with fans and awnings and everything. But
Right.
well, they were well taken care of. But and then they got their $200 and came into my trailer at the end and said, "No, Dad, this is stupid. I don't want to do this." So I thought,
Yes. Did my job.
"Oh, job done."
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. That's great. But I Peter, I really appreciate your time today. This was fantastic. Just catching up
My
on
pleasure. Thanks,
your
Noel.
your stuff. One more question I got for Seinfeld. Now they had which was surprising. Actually, did it. It was featuring New York. They had the mayoral race with Dinkins and Giuliani, where
Yep.
no one really knew either one of those people at that point, and they didn't. We all know Giuliani now, unfortunately. But did they? Because that was right when they were doing the race. Did they shoot like two different endings for that, just in case?
Yeah, exactly. So what happened? I think Seinfeld at that point was airing on a Thursday night,
Yeah.
and I think the election was on a Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. And I think we shot both episodes, both versions. So if Dinkins won, I was the one that got Giuliani to lose, and if Giuliani won, I was the one that got Dinkins to lose. I was either their assistant.
Okay.
So they shot both. We shot both versions, where I was this or that.
Okay.
And both candidates, Dinkins and Giuliani, agreed that on the morning after the election, they would tape that 30 seconds of him saying, we're going to do away with this scourge of non-fat yogurt.
Yeah.
And so they, to their credit, they could do it. They, they had them, before there was a lot of really, internet IT. And so they videotaped him somewhere in New York. And because the show was shot in LA.
Right.
They had it into the show, and the show aired that night.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
Absolutely. But yeah, Peter, thank you. Keep up the good work. Hopefully we'll see you Law and Order Toronto.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Your mouth to God's ears.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Noel.
And a special thanks to Peter for joining me today. And if you have a guest suggestion, you can hit me up on Twitter at @thepersonal19, or like the page Living My Youth on Facebook. You can go to iTunes, check out all the past episodes we've had. While you're there, please rate and review the show. Don't have iTunes? Not a problem. Show's on SoundCloud, Spotify, Podbean, Amazon Music, basically, or if you can find a podcast. A new episode comes out every week. Stay safe, everybody. We'll see you then.